Happy Friday, community. I am Jason Rahm, and this is DevCentral Connects pop-up show, build it live, whatever you want to call it. We're here to have a lot of fun today, and I'm just going to bounce Aubrey on here. Aubrey, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Doing well. I'm excited. We did some things last time. What did we do last time?
So last time we got all the way through building our tenants. Like for anyone who needs to catch up a little bit, we're building an application, like a real one that we're going to use. And so we're going to do that using the F5 distributed cloud. Our application is a simple one. It's going to be RSS feed essentially, and any of the media that goes with that. So really, we're just looking to stand up some customer edge nodes to deploy containers on, and then build some VIPs and an Anycast relationship that will front end all of that and defend it with WAF. So last time we struggled through getting our customer edge nodes up and functional before figuring out that we really needed to go back and build it a completely different way, which to me was fine because we did just get our own tenant. We were doing that on the free tier. So if anyone's curious, you can get a distributed cloud account at F5 for free with really good functionality, I would say. I thought we did a lot with the free tier right out of the gates. Jason, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't get to where we wanted to be for our purposes, which is like multi-node and all that. But come on, it's free, so
Yeah.
So we did get our CEs built on that for that first time. But then when we tried to actually configure them and register them it was not, it wasn't to be. But that's just because we don't RTFM around here, right? So we need to fix that.
Well, and speaking of that, thank you so much to the incomparable Steve Ionetta for joining us last time and really helping us to see the error of our ways. We got quite a bit further thanks to the documentation that you provided the community last week. So.
For sure. And just to prove the fact out, this is our DevCentral tenant in distributed cloud, and Aubrey has his AK app stack successfully upgraded and connected and 100% healthy, as do I for my JR app stack. And if we go to our nice little site map here, we can see that we are connected in there. We can spin that out a little bit. Aubrey's up there in upstate New York. I'm here sitting in the St. Louis area. Mine's actually parked at the arch coordinates for the gateway arch, just about 12 miles down the road from me.
Mine is at the world famous Nick Tahoe's, much more famous than the arch, I would say, from Rochester, New York. Oh, maybe not.
That might be a challenging hypothesis there.
And if you're out there watching in the comments or whatever, drop a line. If you've ever had a garbage plate, or if you know what that is, please share your experiences with that, just to kind of get out there.
That kind of sounds like one of those places Guy Fiero would go for the diners and dives or whatever to eat a garbage plate, or Man versus Food, that guy.
It's been on a whole lot of different Food Network shows out there, but and we do have community tuning in today. We've got a note from Nikhil. I think I said that right. If I didn't, I'm sorry. But that as hello, Jason Rahm. Hey, how are you today? Thanks for tuning in.
No hello for you, Aubrey. Just me. Thank you. Appreciate
That's
that.
Right. I don't get a hello.
In fact, we need to start keeping score for those things and just check mark. We have a little check mark on a whiteboard or something.
Well, what about you? I think it would at least deserve a sound effect. I don't know if you have one pre-canned, but
Oh, you know what? I do need to bring up my sound effects, so we'll work on that.
Yeah, just in case we have fail mode. We actually debuted the sound effects last week when we could not quite run our stuff successfully. But
that's right. Okay, so let me. Where are we going today, Aubrey? What are we doing?
Well, we're actually gonna delve into new territory. I was hoping that you could help me since I am not a CKA, but you are, which is fantastic news from this past week. We are going to actually build our containers using the Kubernetes underpinnings that we do have in the customer edge nodes. But just in case we have some issues with this, we also wanted to bring a little help. We did a lifeline and tossed out a little, rope just to say, please, Mr. Michael Coleman, come and help us. And he was able to make it, which is nice because I think the goal today, to answer your question, Jason, is to just get that RSS feed up and functional. Just the container itself that has the RSS file. If we can actually get that visible by some way locally, then I think we can call this one a success. And we are going to expose the application next week with some WAF. So
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, let's add Michael in. Michael, how are you today?
Well, what's happening?
I like your backdrop there, man. You look like you're in the Soyuz spacecraft or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what kind of lighting effects you got going? I feel like I'm in Dune. It's making your eyes super blue over there.
I love his new lights. It's great. They're fantastic.
Yeah, I had to get a backdrop because actually I'm in a rental right now. We're having a house built in Kansas City, and behind me is like this big mirror on the wall. So it's like if I don't have anything there, it's like you just get to see all kinds of weird imagery. So it's like, well, I bought a brick fabric effect and threw that up there and got lighting splashing on it. It was an Nginx screen yesterday for the Microservices March Lab, and we'll go DevCentral Blue for today. Mix it up.
Yeah, I'm not wearing my DevCentral shirt today. I actually had in-person meetings that I started driving to, and about halfway there, I get a call from the account team that customer decided to change and not have the meeting, so I had to turn around and drive home.
It's interesting. In-person meetings again, right?
I cover public sector and federal government, so it's their kind of modus that they prefer. So occasionally you got to put pants on and leave the house.
Yeah.
Wild.
Oh yeah, you did mention
I don't
you
like to do that. I mean, gym shorts and t-shirts is kind of my thing.
Actually, my wife was curious this morning. She's like, "You're dressed. You clean up nice. What's going on here?" I have to go to work.
I have to do everything in my power to not expose my pajama pants on on the actual YouTubes.
I have
pants on today, but
I went the Zeev path, and I go. It's like parachute pants, harem pants, type scenario, empty hammer pants,
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Hello, Ziv. By the way, I hope you're out there checking it out. It's been a bit.
Okay, so we're in distributed cloud right now. Where we're stuck now is like we've got our app stack CEs up, and we enabled credentials to be able to get in and do things. Where do we go?
We have a container also.
All right,
we haven't built that yet. I need to push that. Well, I mean, we can use any container for the first one, but yeah.
So I actually did, what did I say? I actually did a webinar yesterday on the different container service offerings that we have. So it will all depend. So you have a couple of different ways that you can move forward. So you have the app stack, which offers you that managed Kubernetes platform, which would be, which it sounds like you guys have already done that. You've created the Kubernetes cluster, you've exported your kube configs, and you're ready to access those managed Kubernetes directly. There's another piece, which is an overlay that you can point to every single app stack cluster, as well as every mesh cluster and our F5 owned hardware. And it's a sort of a fleet management, which is the virtual Kubernetes, or I call it the managed namespace. So you can deploy workloads that way, and that way they're distributed redundantly across your entire infrastructure. But if you want to go the path of just doing directly like you would a traditional Kubernetes cluster, it sounds like, is that the way that you guys want to go?
I would think so. I would, because we have more apps that we'll want to bring up in time, and we'll have things that we'll want to play with, I'm sure. So, as much as a fleet sounds like a good idea, can we do that can we fleet just one application?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing about the managed namespace virtual Kubernetes is it delivers on sort of the original promise of Kubernetes, like having that API driven scalable design that will run anywhere. Like you don't have to have specific hardware built for that purpose, specific cluster for it. We don't have to go that route. That route's cool because if you're building a truly distributed application, it will deploy that app to, like I said, everywhere all at once. But if we just want to start easy and do the traditional Kubernetes path, using AppStack is perfectly built for that solution. So if you've already downloaded your kube config,
We have not.
oh, okay. So within the console, and I don't know if you guys wanted to show that or how you
Yeah.
wanted to go through.
Yeah.
I actually still have to install kubectl.
kubectl. Well,
was gonna do
so
that
that's
with my homework.
another benefit of using the virtual Kubernetes aspect is you don't have to manage the tool sets either. So you can do all of your workloads, all of your deployments, everything via ClickOps instead of having to download kubectl or Helm or any of those tools that you might want to use. You can absolutely still do that, but it extrapolates that complexity from as a requirement.
Well, for today, Aubrey, why don't we go that path?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's fine with me. I've done the VK8s, and that would be. Can we put? Are we putting them on the REs, Coleman, or can we?
You
still
can put them.
use
You can put them
VK8s
anywhere. So there's a couple of different. The only real difference between the way that we do it versus the way that you would do it on a traditional DIY Kubernetes platform is we have some extra annotations.
Okay.
So if you don't have kubectl, I mean, if you wanted to download it right now, we can still walk through and do that process and then just show deployment via manifest or whatever. But if you want to do the VK8s path, then we have to make sure that you have a, within distributed apps, you have a virtual Kubernetes config deployed. And you do that. So up in your distributed apps tile. And I assume, so it doesn't look like you guys have namespaces and stuff set up. It looks like you might be working in default.
Yep.
The only caveat that I'll add there is that can be dangerous because the way that our virtual Kubernetes works is that it's an overlay for an actual Kubernetes platform. So many Kubernetes clusters. Default is a default system namespace within Kubernetes. So often it's best practice to not build within that same namespace because then you can end up with race conditions. So if you want to take a step further back, if you go to the admin tile, and then we can go to all the way down. There you go. There you go.
Create some namespaces.
Yep. So we go into personal management.
Yep.
My namespaces, and it says my namespaces, but these are tenant wide. So you can just go here and you can create one. A-King or whatever you wanted to call it.
What? Maybe we should go by application. Would that make sense? Or
oh yeah, absolutely. What is normal? So internal at F5, since we've got SEs, we split everything up namespace wise. Sure. But in traditionally for our customers, what we'll do is we'll do test dev staging or any number of different scenarios for their applications, because this also enforces some security policy around those namespaces as well. So doing it based on application is perfectly adequate and common.
So then local loop, Jason?
You want a local loop? Okay.
We may as well. I mean,
we'll do a dev and then we can have a prod down the road.
Cool.
Okay.
And now real quick, we'll look at IAM and we'll make sure that, so who's sharing? I assume it's Aubrey.
Nope. That's Jason.
No, I am.
So Jason. Okay. Yep. So Jason, go to IAM and let's make sure under users that you and Aubrey have access to that namespace. So just click on the ellipses over to the far right, or you can click on the namespace number there, edit user. So right now you've got all application namespaces, shared, and system. That's fine. All application namespaces, and since you have admin there, you won't have to get granular with those specific app namespaces. And I'll highlight this because it comes up a lot with customers. If you only wanted Aubrey to see that namespace and not know any other namespace existed, then you would take away the all applications. And that way he would be stuck within that specific namespace for his application development. wouldn't know that test or prod existed, wouldn't know that any other applications existed at all. So he's good for this. You can cancel out and we can go back over to your distributed applications.
And I'm
And
following along also here.
under applications, you'll see virtual. Oh, yeah, there you go. Select the namespace. And then under virtual Kates, we'll add a virtual Kates server. And then whatever you'd like to name it.
Let's see. Okay.
Now, this part is pretty easy, but these two drop downs at the bottom can affect that entire deployment as far as security model and workload flavors. So if you see the service isolation is currently set to disabled, that's fine. But then you can further isolate services. And then you can also build custom workload flavors, which you guys probably don't have any today. This comes into play when you're going to have very large services that you might want to specify additional CPU, RAM, or whatever. The virtual Kates has default flavors already assigned, so tiny, medium, large, which are adequate for most applications. So you can just ignore this for now, save and exit. It'll take a few seconds for that to provision, and then we can enter that config and start building out workloads.
Awesome. So this will be neat. I've only done this on regional edges in the past, so I'm curious to see how this works with our little customer edge nodes.
Yeah, the regional edge deployments can be dangerous if you're building from a public registry, because most public registries have flood controls. So if we were to deploy to every single F5 owned regional edge simultaneously, we would flood Docker Hub and they'd say, step off, go do something else. So that's where it's handy. So if you follow any of like the agility guides that we have published out there, you'll see that it's pointing to like my name specifically. So like Coleman East AzureACR.io, so that we're able to deploy to regional edges and other environments without having to hit those public registries and bomb them out and get blocked.
So in that you create what you're saying is you create your own container registry?
Yeah, so that can be misleading. So container registries here is a pointer, and you can point that to a specific container registry, including your credentials. So
Gotcha.
if you wanted to come in here and map your personal account to your personal Docker Hub account, for instance, you come here, you put your Docker Hub credentials, put the Docker Hub URL, and that way it's using your credentials.
Yeah.
People think that will bypass the flooding sometimes, but your personal account still has the same limitations as unauthenticated Docker Hub. So unless you've got like an enterprise account that's got additional access, it's going to have the same effect. But yeah, that's where you'd go if you wanted to point it to like GCR or Azure or wherever whatever you're using as your registry.
Gotcha.
Okay. No, I don't know that we have that set up at this point. It's been a while since I've looked at my Azure.
I've got one if you guys want to use it. I have to find the GitHub repo. I just updated the agility docs yesterday, and I don't know if they're updated on our cloud docs yet.
So notes on stuff for us to do after the fact, Aubrey, is we need to create a repo.
Yes, but well, we are going to need. We're definitely going to need something for today as well. Let me see if I can't get into my Azure in a bit. And I've changed.
I can just pull a container from Docker Hub, right?
Yeah, since we're just deploying to a CE, we shouldn't have any problems at all.
Okay.
It's when you're deploying to the REs because you're deploying to 30 different instances at the same time and they're all trying to pull that same image down.
Right.
That's where you can run into problems.
Okay. All right. Looks like we're ready.
Cool. All right. So from here, you don't even have to worry about select virtual sites. We'll go, actually, let's do that just so that we have it. So cancel out of that. Let's go over to shared. So your shared tile. So hit your select service drop down up top. Go to shared configuration. And when I do this, I generally will use personal labels. If you wanted to do so, hit manage and we'll look at virtual sites. Yeah, there we go. So you can break this out any number of ways and it's based on labels. So if you wanted to create a virtual site that is the continental United States, you can create a virtual site and set the label to be country equals US. What I traditionally do is within my customer edge sites, I will add a label that's specific to me. And then I can say, these are all of my sites. You can do it based on a site name or any other label that's associated to that site. Since I don't know what you guys may have labeled on those sites, let's just add it and see what we find, essentially. But we want to create.
I don't know that we labeled them at all, so maybe we need to add labels to our sites.
They'll have a specific, so it'll give you a drop down, RE and CE type, and we'll be able to figure that out. So you could call this one, DevCentral App Stack CE.
We could make it match what we could, like AK App Stack, I think we did, and JR App Stack, right? So I'm doing mine.
Were you? Was it App Stack CE or App Stack 1?
I thought it was App-Stack. Here, let me go back and take a quick look.
I mean, it's not going to affect it that much. That's just going to be the virtual site name. So you want to do a CE selection, add label. And when you hit this, you'll see it's got any number of things. So fleets, regions, site names. You can also do custom labels. So how many app stacks you guys have, or how many CEs you guys have deployed?
Just two. One in his place
20.
and one in.
So if you wanted to deploy to both of them, you could just do ves.io site type equals CE, and that will deploy the workloads to both. Or it would set both of those sites as your virtual site.
So the virtual site, we want to incorporate both, right?
Yep. And like I was saying, I will use, like, if I'm doing testing in the continental United States or Australia, I've got, I'll use country code, or I'll use another label that I've specifically assigned to my sites in particular.
Okay, so we're this one.
Yeah, site type equals CE.
This virtual site is all of ours.
Yep.
Okay, great. So, and Coleman, if we end up adding Boo's site, because that is a future consideration, Boo also has a NUC. We were going to join that in.
Because it's a CE, it will automatically add into this virtual site.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so there you go. So if you go back to distributed apps.
Okay. Select service. Distributed apps.
And you should also be able to see. So if you click on virtual sites now, it'll show you, or not here. So in the applications, see above virtual Kubernetes, it has virtual sites. We'll just peek real quick and make sure it's got you guys both in there. So you just created DC App Stack. See how it's got two sites?
Yeah.
You can click on that and it'll show you those two sites. They'll be gray because there's no workloads deployed to them right now. But there you go.
Cool.
And where did you find that map that you're in right now?
Virtual sites.
Under applications.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we can go back to virtual Kates now.
Oh, I see.
It's right under. There you go.
Yep.
Now, before we go in there, let's select virtual sites there, and then we'll just select that virtual site, save changes. This just makes it the default setting for workloads that you deploy. Now we'll go in, we'll click on the DC-dev virtual Kates name. Obviously dashboard, but you've got no pods deployed. So you don't really have any metrics right now, but it does look like Jason and Aubrey's CEs are green. So they're all happy right now. So there's a couple of different methods. If you go to deployments, you can actually copy and paste a manifest into the deployment. An easier way, and this is where, it really depends on where customers or users are in their path on containerization. Like, are they a CKA? Are they just trying to get some workloads deployed? We have use cases for each of those, but these also align to the traditional Kubernetes types. So a workload is a workload, deployment, daemon set, etc. So if you're going to do a deployment, then you can copy and paste the YAML here for that workload, and you can edit it in place. So the same way that you'd be able to go into kubectl and edit an existing deployment, you could do the exact same here. To make this easier, let's do a deployment or a workload. Sorry.
Okay. Let me cancel that. Okay.
And then if you guys want to do like a deep dive into YAML, which I hate, I can always join you guys for that later.
I far prefer the imperative commands with kubectl to the YAML.
So let's add a vk8 workload. And do you guys have an app predefined that you want to use?
We don't. I haven't built it. I mean, I can build a container and publish it out to Docker Hub, but we don't really have one built yet.
Okay, so I mean, we can just use Nginx. That's
that should be analogous. Yeah.
And this also one thing that makes this very handy is when we're working with a lot of customers, like building a true distributed application can be complex, and this simplifies that. So let's just call this demo app or whatever you want to call it. And then we're not going to do a simple service on all REs. We're going to drop that down and do a service. And then we're going to configure that service. So here's where it simplifies things. So if you wanted to deploy an instance of Nginx, an instance of MySQL, an instance of Redis across every single workload, all you have to do is come up here to the top where you have containers. We'll just create configs for each of those containers. And then we can pass all of the parameters to it through the config parameter. So let's add item under containers. You can just call this Nginx container. Image to use is just going to be Nginx. And then this is where you can do advanced configs here. We don't need them. And this is also where you have the option to select from a private registry if you had one built. Do you want to just show the advanced fields so you can see what other things here? This includes things like heartbeat, initialization, stuff like that to make sure that the container is live and happy. But you can also specify the workload flavor. So see here where it's set on tiny. That's perfectly fine for an Nginx workload. You can set that higher. Behind the scenes, this is actually setting all of the annotations and labels in the manifest.
Yeah.
So once we've built this, you can actually see the YAML that this builds and edit it in place like it's a traditional deployment using kubectl and a manifest.
What if we have a little bit of disk need here? And what I mean by that is maybe a gig.
Yeah, so that's where we were talking earlier on the vk8 config where you can add an additional workload flavor. Yeah. So these are the tiny, medium, and large that are default. You can also create larger. So you want to hit that after we configure these parts, and I'll show you guys where you could configure the larger workload flavors.
Sure.
Okay. So we don't need a liveness check. We don't need a readiness check. You can I would absolutely recommend doing that in a production environment. But just for this purpose, you guys can come in and edit this later. You should be able to apply from right now. So we're doing a default registry. It's going to pull from Docker Hub. Perfectly adequate. Now, where I was saying before, if you wanted to add MySQL into this, let's not do it, but add an item. You can call this MySQL container. And then you would just use image name MySQL. So actually, let's apply this. We're going to delete it, but let's apply it so we can see how you would configure that. So now you've got two containers that are part of this workload. Under parameters is where you would put things like MySQL host, MySQL password, switch it from file to env. Yep.
Gotcha.
So you would set these like you would any traditional variables within the manifest. So MySQL password, usernames, Nginx user, for example, any of those variables you would set here. Since we're not going to do MySQL, we can just cancel or go back on this one. Let's delete that MySQL container. And then we get to the important part. So you can absolutely do additional volumes here. So if you want to do PVCs off of this, Aubrey, instead of just doing it off the, doing a larger container size, if you wanted to map a volume to somewhere else, you want to do S3, you want to do ECS, whatever, you can do all of that here. That's not necessary for right now. What is necessary is setting our deployment options. So instead of deploying to all regional edges, we want to deploy to that virtual site that we created earlier. So customer virtual sites, configure, and then select the app stack. Boom, there we go. So apply that. And then the other big important part is the advertise options. So there's an option here where we could advertise directly to the internet, which would jump from this config, help us configure the load balancers and everything directly. I like to have a little bit more control over it. So I do advertise and cluster. If you go to advertise and cluster, the configure option there, it's just the port. So we're going to specify 80 for Nginx, apply that. And then that's it. Now, if you apply this and then save and exit, it's going to download the Nginx container, deploy it on both of your app stacks under the local loop -dev namespace on both of your app stacks. So if you were to look at your managed Kubernetes configs under Cloud and Edge sites, it would show you that you both now have that namespace with pods being deployed. So let's refresh here before we navigate away, just so we can see. So you got 2 total sites. It hasn't sites without pods. So they don't have any pods yet. So that might just take a minute.
I'm watching this build on my side as well. And we also had a question in there, which is which tool is used. I'm assuming, you're asking which tool are we looking at here on the screen. This is the F5 distributed cloud that we're looking at, the console. We're using the virtual Kubernetes or virtual K8s functionality that is within it. And we are going to be deploying onto a couple of edge nodes that are in, distributed between our homes.
Yeah, so it looks like it's just taking a minute. But we can kind of step through and see what that'll look like. So if you, in a minute, it's actually going to create a service. So if you see across the top, you've got your workload deployment, table sets, blah, blah, blah. You also have the services. So if you click on services, it most likely won't. Oh, there we go. So there's that app that we deployed. It has 2 endpoints already created. And you can see that it's deployed on both of your app stacks. Just because the service is up doesn't mean that the workload is actually up yet. But the important part here is there's 2 pieces that we have to capture. The service name. So we created a service named demo-app, and that resides in the local loop-dev namespace. So when we create the origin pools and the load balancers to publish this, that is the service name that we use, since we directly integrate into the Kubernetes service discovery. So you can exit out of that. You can go back to your workload and see if anything's deployed yet. Looks like 2 total pods, 2 running pods. Now, before we go anywhere else, if you click on deployments, and this is where we were looking before, you'll now have a deployment here. If you edit on the ellipses over to the far right, this is where we could actually edit the manifest in place. So you're in YAML, and you can actually look at all of the fields associated with this workload.
That's cool.
This also becomes handy because in a lot of places, like if you're not a CK and you're not super familiar with the manifest, you can build this, but you can also then take the manifest from your application and use that, send that to whomever needs that. You can put that in a source of truth, put it in whatever CI that you're using. I can put this in GitLab or GitHub and use this for GitOps for my applications. It makes it super easy to migrate.
Yeah, I'm getting good enough with it now that I know which fields I can pull out that I don't need to actually communicate the value of the pod. Not good enough to write YAML from scratch yet.
While we're looking at it, and this is where I was talking earlier about the additional annotations. So you see under your metadata annotations, line 11 here, or not, line 12. This is one of our specific annotations that tells it where to deploy this workload. So in a traditional manifest, you're not going to have this VesIO virtual sites or VesIO sites. So If you try to deploy that manifest on distributed cloud, it doesn't know where you want it deployed. So it's not going to deploy it anywhere. So for us, this is just the additional feature that says, hey, I want this deployed to this. It will deploy it there. The cool thing is, because you're using a virtual site, which points to any number of actual physical locations, you can deploy it to every single location simultaneously just by using that annotation.
Yeah, that's cool. And there's our namespace that we had set up.
Local
Yep.
loop dev, yeah.
Yep.
Now it's
Now-
interesting. I'm not seeing that on my side. That is like if I go into the demo app under workloads, I'm not seeing any of the, any of that JSON.
Oh, really?
But yeah,
The YAML on
Or
the
the YAML, yeah.
deployments demo app.
yep,
Do you see the demo app?
I do.
So if you go to edit under the triple actions, you're not seeing that.
Yeah, no. Interesting.
It could just be a browser. You got too many security tools in your browser.
Yeah.
Probably.
I've had to disable Privacy Badger and ad blocker and all those things on occasion to get stuff to load. Now, how far did you guys want to take this? Did you want to just deploy the workload, or did you want to actually publish it to the internet?
We're going to publish next Wednesday because we're going to play around with just getting it out here. And what we'd like to do next show is, well, actually, maybe what we can do is take a step back and do another workload, because I wanted to walk through.
I mean,
the process. Go ahead.
There's a couple pieces that I would point out to you guys too, if you wanted to keep digging through this aspect.
Sure.
I mean, if you, so
Bring
one
it.
thing is, so under running pods, you see you've got 2, you can click on that. And this comes in pretty handy too, as somebody who went down the CKA path and just decided that I didn't need it. I mean, I work with it enough that, what's it going to do for me at F5 other than give me knowledge of digging through? But what I found is that Kubernetes administrators don't want to deal with certain parts. Developers don't want to deal with the other parts. The network guys obviously only want to deal with the network part. So it gets real complex. But when you have something like this, so here's your 2 pods that are running, and you can see that one is running under AK AppStack and one is running under JR AppStack. If I wanted to evaluate these pods, if I'm getting like crash loop back off or error image pull or something like that, I can click on the name of the pod. So instead of doing like a kubectl describe pod, kubectl log, whatever, I can go here, click on the pod name, and then I've got some troubleshooting tools here. So I can click logs, and you'll see 2 container names because we only did 2 containers, the Nginx. Wingman is a default, so that's our sidecar that's part of XC. So if you do Nginx container, it'll show you any logs from that system. So there we go. Nginx is running, looks perfect. If there's any kind of other issue, maybe you need to jump in and change something in that pod to test something, you can go to terminal and you can run a specific command. So if you select the drop down for Nginx container, what I often do is if you just type in bash, it'll drop you into bash in that container. So now you have a running container that's running Nginx. Maybe you're getting a weird page. So maybe you want to jump in and troubleshoot and see what's going on. This is where you could do that instead of doing like kubectl interactive pod name, whatever, to get into that container and run bash. There you go. So now you're bashed into that container running in Aubrey's house, and you can start attacking everything in Aubrey's house.
Well, so am I able to actually able to do a curl against this in my house somehow?
No, because the
Not yet,
service is
because you're
not
cluster
published.
only.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's advertised into what we call the vcates network.
Yep.
So if you wanted to publish it into your house, you can 100% do that. We would create an origin pool and a load balancer that is advertised in your house.
Yep.
And I've done that quite often. But it looks like Nginx is up and running perfectly in this container. We did everything right. So that's just one thing I wanted to point out for you guys, is that this also simplifies, like, I don't have to, I know everybody has aliases set up for kubectl now, and they can easily jump in and do describe and do these things. But there are users that don't remember all the commands, and maybe you don't want them running all those commands. And when you have them building their app within a specific namespace, they can get in and do this without having to worry about their cube context and which tool set they're using and all those things. They can focus on building the app instead of focus on fixing their tools.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
So there's our get.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah,
Where
that's
did
really
you-
cool because
Where did you run that get from?
When he
In
bashed
terminal.
in.
Yeah, I bashed in. So once it's there, let's see, Nginx. I'll do it again.
Cool. Yeah,
So I'm in here.
I gotta
Just curl.
increase the size here.
If I can type localhost, and that's on port 80.
Bam.
There you go.
Look at that. Okay.
So we come back over to our logs,
And you did the get.
and there's our second one.
Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah, it's really handy because I don't know. I almost never remember my exec IT dash bash.
And
for
it can
kubectl.
get complex too. Like if you've got pods deployed with multiple containers, like
Yeah.
you have to remember that you select the pod and then you have to select the container. And because the pod and container names are ephemeral, like you always have to be like, oh, what are the pod names again? I just rebuilt this. So let's get the list of pods for every pod that's this name, So even here you see demo app 79DD, whatever.
Right.
Like even if you're a pro with using the CLI, like it can be a pain in the butt sometimes. So
Yep.
now you said you wanted to step back and do another workload.
Yeah, I think today. Yeah. So basically, what I wanted to do. Let me stop sharing this. Is for the audience that's coming along with us that are not devs and have not done anything with how are these containers even being built. Was just going to walk through building a container real quick, and then that'll take a couple seconds, and then maybe we can pull that in from Docker Hub and deploy that as well. But I just wanted to be able to show. Let me share the other screen. Here we go. Just kind of talk through that real quick. So for me, I just moved from Docker Desktop to Podman after the SE call. Was a month and a half, 2 months ago, where the Red Hat guy came and was talking about that, and so yesterday, day before, maybe it's been a couple days. Finally got that process down, and I use Docker locally, but I've never published anything to Docker Hub. I've never pulled my own containers into a workload or anything like that. It's just all for local development. So figuring that out for myself the other day, but just kind of going through a Docker file here is what Nginx, what image that you're going to base on. And then, I'm exposing on port 8080 in this case, taking my app's requirements to build that stuff. And then I'm going to, update the container to be able to apply my requirements. And then I'm just copying for this. I'm doing Nginx unit because it's an app server. And so it's allowing my Python ASGI application, which is fast API, to be able to do asynchronous, requests and all that. Anyway, so you have to have your Docker file. You have to have your actual web app itself, which, there's a lot of little pieces, but the core of it is you have a router, which is just, the URL you're going to send them to. You're either going to have a JSON response, which is the default file. There's a lot of different response types, but HTML response or file response. In this case, Aubrey and I are going to do an RSS feed eventually. This was just test. This isn't what we're going to do eventually. But very basic. There's no styling or anything. It's just about testing something, making sure it works. And then when the container's built, it's going to apply this configuration for Nginx unit, which then tells it how to load that app. And that's what this config.json is over here. And effectively, you're just establishing a listener, and then the application itself is, going to be deployed. We're calling it Jimmy Packets because that's our local, mascot here at DevCentral. And then just the type, it's, Python 3.11. It's an ASGI application, and it's callable is app. It expects application Nginx unit does, but in the main, it's app dot. I can show you that file real quick.
I mean, it's pretty close to the way that I do things. I use VS Code, which has some plugins that make integrating with one of the things I started doing, which when there was that whole initial debacle where Docker was going to start charging and people started moving and trying to find their new replacement, I built a Kubernetes cluster here at the house that I just use for remote development. So within VS Code, you just connect a remote host and it will use that Kubernetes subsystem for all of your containers. So you don't even have to have a Docker or a ranch or anything deployed locally.
Nice.
And then because it has the Docker plugin, you can just say this build image, publish image in like 2 or 3 clicks. It's done.
Wow. I'll have to talk to you about that
Yeah,
offline and get
Aubrey
that,
and I have talked
working.
about VS Code in the past, and it's a religious debate.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I love VS Code. I use it for things. Most of my Python development I still do in PyCharm, just because it's what I know. I know it well, and but I use VS Code for all the F5 stuff, and I love it. I just haven't converted my Python stuff over there.
Yeah,
But
I haven't
go
tried
ahead.
Podman, but like with VS Code, like you can right click build image and it'll give you like as it steps through building the image in case something goes wrong. So you can very quickly jump back. Hey, hit spacebar, go back, fix this code. This because sometimes you can get messed up. Like if there's a space wrong in the run command as you're doing like the apt get or something. So this will be new for me when you build your image.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty simple. It's like point and click. It's a Podman build at the command line. But here it's just, you just point it to your Docker file, and here I'm just going to call it JP for Jimmy Packets, and it'll do its thing here pretty quickly. And then that image is cached locally, so it didn't have to go down and pull the Nginx Python 3.11. So I get a nice little done here pretty soon. And once it's done, I can click here and run a container, which I can leave blank for it to do its dynamic name, or I can name it and start it. And then it's running. So, I could share, and it's all it is a text file. It works. But the other thing that we can do is we can actually push that out to Docker, which I haven't done yet. But that would go to resources, the requested access to the resources denied. All right, well, I'll have to research why that's doing it.
You have to map your credentials.
I think I did that. Yeah. Well, I won't show it because I don't know if it'll pop it up. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I did that. Anyway, we can solve that another day. But I am curious about going the path of using VS Code and getting rid of the Podman altogether and just using the Kubernetes cluster, because I have that. It's here.
It forces you, well, it's forced me to have to know how to manage my own Kubernetes clusters on a regular basis, because that's where I run all of my images, like all of my test stuff, all of my long running applitions, and I can very easily do it. But I also don't take up, one of the biggest complaints that I had with Docker was that docker.raw, it would claim all of my hard drive space. And on my work laptop, I was limited. So every day I'd have to go in, delete the docker.raw to clear all the space. So it's like, why am I doing this to myself? So I just pushed it all remote.
Oh, we got actually some questions here. We got one that is, how are Kate's upgrades managed when clusters are at the edge?
So the way that we handle the updates is we have regular update cadence. So because we're a SaaS platform, every 4 to 6 weeks, we push a major release. With those major releases come updates potentially to the Kubernetes platform as well. So we don't just surprise you and automatically upgrade Kubernetes. You have the ability to either allow them to process via whatever pipeline that you might have in place. If there's an update, then yes, push. Or you can go and you can do your OS and Kubernetes OS upgrades from the console. So there's objects that will show up and say update OS, update software.
Okay. Now, another interesting comment, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this one, but Nikhil had a great one here. So Kubernetes cluster on the Velos platform. At this point, to my understanding, we cannot manage those with distributed virtual K8s. I don't think Velos is integrated with the distributed cloud today. Is that still correct, Michael?
Yeah. So there's a difference between F5 OS and what's running on the big IP hardware versus what's running on the distributed cloud platform. The distributed cloud is not big IP. It's not big IP in the cloud. There are some caveats. So I mentioned that I did a webinar yesterday. There's 3 pillars that I talk about when I talk about CAS. And then there's Michael Leary put out an article on DevCentral a couple weeks ago that kind of hits those 3 pillars as well. There's the managed Kubernetes. We talked about that with AppStack. There's the virtual Kubernetes, which I call managed namespace because that more closely aligns to the industry. And then there's the third-party integrations. So while we don't directly manage third-party Kubernetes, we can deploy our edge instance into an existing cluster and help add security and connect that to our global fabric as well. So if you needed to take the way that we just built that Nginx service on our platform, if we wanted to publish that into other clusters, we could publish that not to just our clusters, but we could publish that into Rancher or OpenShift or whatever by deploying as a pod in those clusters. And that would also give any services running in those third-party clusters the ability to publish through our global fabric, which is significant.
Yeah, that's cool.
All that said, though, wouldn't it be a great idea if we could push out some of those services for Velos onto the distributed cloud? I'm just saying.
I mean, I'm just an architect in the field trying to get by.
I have a feeling we may have talked about this once or twice, Coleman. Okay. Well, I don't know. We got that's a ton we got done. We're coming up on time here, Jason. What are your thoughts?
We are. Yeah, I'm excited. We got a workload going. We got a cluster IP service running, and that's exciting. We'll actually take next steps. We'll get our custom containers built and published to a repo ahead of Wednesday when we do the next show, where we're actually going to make this thing live to the public and publish. So I'm sure some load balancers will be involved in that. So
some WAF action. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thanks for coming by, Coleman. I mean, it was so well planned on our.
I mean, usually when you reach out, I've got 8 million things going, but luckily today I had some meetings canceled and I was around.
Bully for us, yeah. So Friday shows is where it's at, right? So.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, Aubrey. Yes, another episode. We accomplished some things. Feel pretty good about it, and I'm very excited about Wednesday. So we'll get our ducks in a row on the back end, get our container built and published, so that we can pull it in and showcase what we want to showcase, and that'll be a lot of fun. So, and maybe next Wednesday we publish what we're going to publish without security services, so we can have metrics for the next show when we add the security services, and see what we see and see how impactful not having security services just might be to your workloads.
Well, I hope we don't get trashed, but the good thing about it, of course, is we can just stamp out new ones. So, well,
what we'll do with it is just not make anything writable. So, we'll get some queries and all that, but and some interrogation. But if we don't make anything writable, we should be fine.
Love it.
So, all right. Well, Aubrey, thank you for joining me again today for this Build It Live. I had fun. We learned a lot, and we hope everybody has a great weekend. It is Friday afternoon. Only have a few more hours before the weekend starts. So at least for us, I know if there's some West Coasters here in the United States watching us, it's a little earlier in the day. Maybe you're just leaving for lunch. So you got a little bit longer, but Aubrey's an hour ahead of me. You're about to coast into the weekend. So,
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
yep. But don't forget Tuesday, Boo has Ryan McLean from Datadog, 8:30 a.m. Pacific on DevCentral Connects. So make sure you tune in for that. And we'll be back on Wednesday for our next episode of Build It Live.
Ooh, and we should have this month of security probably out tomorrow. I think that's probably going to be the target day. So Peter, if you're
Nice.
out there, it should be done.
And you have a little pet project of mine coming out on podcast here pretty shortly as well, which
That's
I'm
right.
excited to talk about next week. So, all right.
let's have
We
it
got
out
a
there.
comment here. Yeah, absolutely. Nikhil, thanks for joining us, and it's insightful for us too. That's a great thing about doing these is like I'm a distributed cloud greenie, and so it's great for me to be able to discover and learn our tools and be able to talk about them and share about them and be more knowledgeable, so that as questions are coming into the DevCentral forums, we have the ability to address those. So that's good. That's why we're doing this. One, to bring the services to you so that you can discover them, but also so that we can actually help the community troubleshoot them as we go, because that's one of our mandates in the community. So if you haven't been out to DevCentral in a while, community.f5.com, join us over there for furthering the conversation. We'll see you all out there in the community. Have a great weekend.